The next thing they're going to ask us to do is to build equivalent fractions. Now, we've already worked with reducing fractions by dividing the top and the bottom by the same number, but today we're going to learn also how to make equivalent fractions by multiplying the top and the bottom by the same number. Let's say that I have 5/8, but I want to make it into 40ths for whatever reason. So, how can I change my 5/8? Well, again, I need to multiply it by something that won't actually change the value of the number. If I multiply something by 1, it stays the same, right? 4 times 1 is 4, and 8 times 1 is 8, and 12 times 1 is 12. But what if my 1 doesn't look like a 1? You remember when we were talking about how if I had 4 over 4, this equals 1, because I can divide the top and the bottom by 4. So if I were to multiply a problem by 4 over 4, it's just like multiplying a problem by 1. So it doesn't really change what we're talking about. It just breaks my pieces into smaller pieces. I still have the same amount that I'm talking about, but I've broken them into smaller pieces. So if I want to make my 5/8 into 40ths, I have to figure out, how do I get from 8 to 40? Well, I know that 8 times 5 is 40. So if I were to multiply this by 5 over 5, this is the same thing as multiplying this by 1. So I'm not hurting it at all. I'm just making it look different. 8 times 5 is 40. 5 times 5 is 25. So doing this part tells me how many of the 40ths I need so that it still equals 5/8. Let's try another one. I want to get 3/4 into 16ths. Well, I know that 4 times 4 is 16. If I do that to the bottom, I have to do it to the top too. 3 times 4 is 12. So I know that 3/4 equals 12/16. These are equivalent fractions. Equivalent. And it's got that word equal as its beginning because they both mean that they're equal. Okay? 2-30, 2-31, 2-32, 2-33. They all help you work out how to build equivalent fractions. They're very serious about this if they've given you 4 pages to work it out. So let's do a couple more together, and then I'm going to have you do some on your own. I need to get 7/10 into hundredths. So the first thing I'm going to do is say, how do I get from 10 to 100? What do I multiply 10 by to get to 100? And if I do that to the bottom, I have to do that same thing to the top. 7 times 10 is 70. So 7/10 equals 70 hundredths. Leave it there. I know it needs reducing. We just built an equivalent fraction, though. That's all we're doing. 5 times what equals 30? 5 times 6. And 3 times 6 is 18. And here we've got one that we have to reduce, just like we did earlier. So what do I need to reduce 9 and 12 by? Well, I know that 9 is 3 times 3, and I know 12 is 3 times 4. They've got a 3 in common. So I'm going to divide the top and the bottom by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3. 12 divided by 3 is 4. Okay? Notice that I actually write these here. I write them there so that I don't forget what it is that I'm doing, because it's really easy. Let's see. The most often fraction reducing mistake, you want to see it? It's this one, 4/9, because 4 reduces to 2 and 9 reduces. They look at this and they know that it's 2 times 2. And they look at this and they know that it's 3 times 3. The problem is, if I do this, I can't also do that. That doesn't work. I know that down here it has to be divided by 3, but divided by 3 up here doesn't work. 4/9 is actually already reduced. You can't reduce it farther. So don't just glance at a fraction and think, oh, I know what that is reduced, because it doesn't always work that way. Make sure that you can find the number that's the top and the bottom that works for both of them, okay? Converting units of measure. Now, this can be a little difficult. In this class, you're going to do the basics. In Math 20, you're going to do it more complicated. If Math 65, you're going to do it even more complicated than that. I really need you to understand the basics here. I have another video on this page called Dimensional Analysis. If you're reasonably comfortable with this, or you're worried about it getting harder, have a look at that video, because that's the same video I use to teach Math 20. And because it does get complicated, if you don't understand the basics of it, people tear their hair out over it. So please make sure that you understand this. Go back and rewind and listen to this part again if you need to, but make sure that you're comfortable with this particular section, okay? Now, converting units of measure is like, I have 5 feet, how many inches is it? So you're converting from the units that you measure with. I have 4 gallons, how many cups do I have? Okay? Now, to start with, you need a good list of what the conversions are, and there is a really good list on page 2-33 of all of the units that you're going to need for working this section. We're going to start by using unit fractions to help us convert. A unit fraction always equals 1. It has equal measures on the top and the bottom. For example, 7 days over 1 week. 7 days and 1 week is the same thing. It's like saying 4 over 4. These two are the same thing. These two are the same thing. They just look different. But because they are the same, we can use them to help convert. 7 days and 1 week are the same. So putting one over the other is the same as multiplying it by 1. The cool thing is you can flip them if you need to. Doesn't matter which one's on top and which one's on bottom when you're just looking at it. What matters is how you put them in the math problem, and that's what we're going to learn next. So let's say you have a problem that says, convert 42 days into weeks. We've got our days and weeks here, and we're going to work this out. So the first step, and I would write down these 4 steps. Make sure you write down these 4 steps because these are important. First thing you're going to do is make what you're given a fraction. Well, this is what I'm given. This is my problem, 42 days. I'm going to make that into a fraction, and the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to put it over 1. So there's the first part of my problem is 42 days over 1. Then my second step is to multiply it by a unit fraction. Now I'm going to use either this one or this one because this has days and weeks in it. And I know that there are 7 days in a week. The question is, do I use this one or do I use this one? Which one do I put on top? Well, what I need you to understand is that we're going to cross-cancel the words we don't need so that we can end up with the unit that's going to be the answer to our problem. We're starting out with 42 days. I want to get rid of days, and I want my answer to say some number, weeks. So I'm going to multiply it by the one where the days can cross-cancel. Here the days is on top. I want the days to be on bottom. So I'm going to choose this one. So I'm going to multiply it by 1 week over 7 days. Now check this out. When I go to multiply these two fractions, my days, the word days, cross-cancels. There's nothing down here. My answer is going to be weeks, which is cool. That's what I need my answer to be. Now, number 4, I'm going to multiply straight across and divide. Oh, I'm going to cross-cancel. So I cross-canceled my days. Check out what else I can cross-cancel. I know that 7 goes into 42 6 times, and 7 goes into 7 1 time. Now I'm going to multiply straight across. 6 times 1 is 6, and I've got nothing but 1s on the bottom. So my answer is 6 weeks. Did you see how that worked? You're starting with something. It tells you the two things you need to compare. You look that up on your list. You come up with the unit fraction, and you figure out which one goes on the bottom so it cross-cancels from the top. All right, I am taking the practice problems right off page 235 if you would like to follow along. If you would like to try them now, actually that would be ideal. Try them yourself. Push pause now, try them, and then push play, and I'll work through them with you. Or you can do one at a time if you want. But try them first. If you just passively just watch me, then by the time you get to your homework, you're like, oh, all right. So yeah, be active about it. I'm going to convert 4 miles to feet. So I'm going to start with what I'm given. I'm going to put 4 miles, and notice I'm putting 4 miles, not just 4. Over 1. And I'm going to multiply this. Now I need to know the conversion, the unit fraction for miles and feet. I know there are 5,280 feet in a mile. The question is, do I put miles on top or miles on bottom? I want to put miles on bottom. 1 mile is 5,280 feet. Now I know I can cross-cancel the word mile, but I can't cross-cancel any numbers because all these numbers are on top. So now I'm going to have to multiply 5,280 by 4. And 21,120 feet over 1, which means this goes away, and that's your answer. Next one. I'm converting 28 cups into pints. I'm going to start by writing this down. I have 28 cups over 1. And I know that there are 2 cups in a pint. And I know that cups is going to go on the bottom, so it's diagonal. There are 2 cups in 1 pint. And I can cross-cancel the word cups. And I know that 2 goes into 2 1 time, and 2 goes into 28 14 times. And if I multiply straight across, I get 14 pints. Then I'm going to convert 6 pounds into ounces. Now, this is a word problem that appears on page 2-35. Now, the problem sounds something like this. I have 6 pounds of chocolate. Is that enough for a recipe that calls for 100 ounces of chocolate? So it's asking me to convert the 6 pounds of chocolate that I have into, the question is 100 ounces enough? Well, I got to convert it to ounces to figure that out. So I'm going to start with the 6 pounds that I have and put it over 1. And I'm going to multiply it. I know that in weight, there are 16 ounces in a pound. So 1 pound is 16 ounces. I'm going to put 1 pound on the bottom and 16 ounces on top. So my pounds cross-cancel. And I'm going to multiply 6 times 16, and 6 times 16, 6 times 6 is 36, 6, 7, 8, 90. That's 96 ounces. So the question is 100 ounces, is this enough for a recipe that calls for 100 ounces? No, it's not. You still need 4 ounces of chocolate. So I'm hoping this kind of got your appetite whet as to how to work these. I followed those 4 steps every single time. Have those 4 steps in front of you and follow those every time you do these problems. Okay?